Hey everybody, it's Dolores, the pastor's daughter. I just want to come on for a minute and just, ask a simple question. Simple question that doesn't have a simple answer. And the question is, what if I don't forgive? What if I don't forgive? It just seems like we put so much pressure on ourselves and each other to rush to this place of forgiveness, rush to announce that we've forgiven, or in the event that we want to talk about our pain, we're asked, have you forgiven? And in my experience with the trauma that I went through growing up at the hands of my father, it wasn't something that I could rush through. It wasn't something that I could just make a declaration, pronouncement that, or an announcement that I forgave and that would somehow right the wrongs. But in my experience of what I went through, it seems like there's a process. Like there are stages almost, and sometimes you can go back and forth through these stages, almost like the stages of grief. And you go through these stages of denial and anger and acceptance and rationalization and all of these things. And to me, it just seems like you go back and forth throughout the levels, especially when the person is either continuing to do you harm, or if the person refuses to acknowledge the harm that they've done. I can't say that the experience would be the same if the person acknowledged their wrong, admitted that they were wrong, apologized for their wrong, or in some way was punished for their wrong, or they just stopped doing their wrong. I think in those cases it may be different. But in my situation, because different aspects of abuse stopped, other aspects of it continued, which meant that the overall abuses continued. And it was hard for me to get to a place of forgiveness with my father, with things continuing as they were. And not only that, but he also made excuses for the things that he did. And in some cases, he used God as his reasoning, his alibi, or to put pressure on me to forgive him quickly, to move on, to forget, and to never speak of it again. And it just didn't happen that way. It couldn't happen that way. And to be honest, I wouldn't allow it to happen that way. Because despite what I've been taught my whole life about forgiveness and the distorted way the Bible was interpreted in terms of forgiveness, I just knew that wasn't going to work for me. And even the times where I tried to make this declaration of forgiveness, it wasn't real. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't something I could move on to healing. It wasn't a declaration that I could make and they actually helped with anything. It didn't help. It was just lying to myself. and lying to him, my father, for the sake of making him feel better about what he was doing and about what he had done. To me, it just seemed like forgiveness was always used as like an excuse to continue doing wrong. You know, to sweep it under the rug, to not make anyone uncomfortable with the conversations, the admitting or anything like that. Like, have you forgiven? You know, like, just let's just move on. You know, if you haven't forgiven, then you're in the wrong. But I mean, how can you rush my forgiveness? How can my healing process be rushed? But the abuse that I experienced was long lasting, was happening over years and years, over a lifetime. But the moment that I open my mouth and try to speak up about the abuse, it's, have you forgiven? And I just don't understand with that logic how anyone is expected to heal. How is anyone expected to move on in strength and actually move to a place of true forgiveness when the healing process is rushed? And it's rushed, why? Because we don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations. Because we don't want to talk about what we've done wrong. We don't want to admit even that we've done some of the things that abuse victims have claimed have been done to them. But that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. It never was. It never will be. And it's just not in this moment. It's not in this moment. And in this moment, we speak the truth. And the truth is what leads us to forgiveness. If unforgiveness is like bondage and the truth is what sets us free, then why does my truth need to be silenced, muffled, made prettier than what it was? I don't have to tell you a pretty story. If he wanted a pretty story, then he should have given me a pretty story to tell. But my childhood wasn't a pretty story. So if he wanted a pretty story, he should have lived a pretty life. But the story that I tell will be reflective of what I experienced, what I lived, what I know, what I studied, what I prayed about, what I've worked through in therapy and otherwise. That's how we move to this place of forgiveness. And honestly, I don't even feel like we should make declarations of forgiveness unless the person has asked for it. Why do I need to let you know that I forgive you? Especially if forgiveness is for me. That's what everyone says. Forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is for you. Okay. Well, I don't feel the need to announce it. That's for me too. That's for me to decide. And sometimes our announcements of these declarations of forgiveness that we give people without anything from them without a changed heart, without a changed life, without an admittance, without asking an apology, or giving an apology, or asking for forgiveness. We just freely give it. I mean, we should probably freely give it, but do we have to freely announce it? I don't know. Take a breath. Anyway, I'm gonna let y'all go. All right. Bye bye for now.